Alright, so for this video demonstration, I want to go over how to send email in PHP, specifically sending it from localhost. Now, if we were sending our email using our PHP script and our script was uploaded to an actual web server, then the configuration to send the email would have been done for us pretty much. But I just want to show how we can do it from localhost, for those persons who might have assignments and so to do. This should be useful. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to configure our php.ini file, which is our PHP configuration file, and we also need to configure our sendmail file, our sendmail.ini file, which is the configuration file for sending email in PHP. All right. All right, so to configure the PHP configuration file, I am going to go to my C drive. Then I'm going to open my XAMPP folder because when I installed XAMPP, it was installed to my C drive. All right, so I'm going to open my XAMPP folder. All right, then I am going to open my PHP folder, which is here. So the next thing I want to do is to look for my PHP configuration file and change the configuration. All right, what I'll do is I will list these steps possibly in the description so persons can just follow along or at least use these steps to do the same thing that I'm doing here. All right, so I am, as I said, looking for my PHP configuration file, and it is right here. Right, so it says php.ini. In the type, it says configuration settings. So I'm going to open this with Notepad. Now, what I want to do is search for the mail function. So an easy way to go to the mail function in this particular file is to do a Control F and type mail function. Right, and here it is. So I need to make changes to some parameters that can be found within the mail function. Right, I'll tell you what those are in a while. All right, so because I am using Gmail as my SMTP server, where it says SMTP here and it says equal localhost, I am going to change that to say smtp.gmail.com because again, I want to use Gmail as my SMTP server, or I want to use Gmail's SMTP server as mine here in localhost. So I'm going to, for this, I'm going to say smtp dot gmail.com, right? And because I'm using Gmail, I'm going to change my SMTP port number to 587. Right, for my send from email, I'm going to put the email address of the Gmail account that I'll be using to utilize my smtp.gmail.com, right? Or to utilize Gmail as my SMTP server. Right, so I place my email address, so I should be fine. Next thing that I want to do is to set the send mail path. Now, if you are in this particular configuration file and you see a semicolon here is acting as a comment. So right now, this cannot be read. It is being seen as a comment. So I'll just remove this semicolon and then I'll set the path. Now again, XAMPP for me is installed on my C drive. All right, so the path would be C drive, XAMPP, sendmail, and so forth. All right, so where we can find the file that will actually be used to send the email. All right, so the value that I want here is quotation, backslash, quotation, and then C colon backslash XAMPP backslash send mail backslash send mail.exe, right? So there's actually a folder called sendmail, and it actually contains a sendmail executable file, right? And then backslash quotation and then space hyphen t. All right, so here to run the sendmail file, I can use the hyphen t here, right? Now, very importantly, there should be a space between this quotation here and the hyphen t. In the past, I would have been guilty of not putting the space, and then I would have run into issues running my PHP script to send the email. So ensure that the space is right there. All right, so once these values are set, we are good to move on. So again, for the send mail path, you set the path to where the send mail executable file can be found. So that must be done. Then you will set a from address here, and again, this is tied to the Gmail account that I'll be using. You set your port, and you also indicate that you are using Gmail as your SMTP server, right? So I'm going to save this. Well, my bad. I just need to save. All right, we're good to go. Not save as, but we can just save. All right, next I need to go back into XAMPP here and look for this send mail folder, and then I want to open this sendmail.ini file. Right, and we want to go to where this send mail function is, or this send mail option is. Now we need to set our SMTP server, and it's the same thing, so it's smtp.gmail.com. So it's the same thing that we would have typed in the PHP configuration file. Same thing we're setting here as our SMTP server in our send mail configuration file, right? Again, I'm using Gmail, so I'm going to change my port from 25 to 587, right? A few other things to look at. Well, SSL is set to auto for us, so that is great. The error log is uncommented, so that will execute as well. I'm going to uncomment this debug log file as well. right? And importantly now, we need to set a value for the authentication, right? So it says if your SMTP server requires authentication, modify the following two lines. So I need to set a username and a password. Again, this username is the email of the Gmail account that I'll be using, and then I'll have to set a password corresponding to that particular Google account or that particular Gmail um, address. All right, so this is what I am using. Now, in the past, you could have just placed your Gmail password here, but for security reasons, Google sort of change how they do things when you're working with a third-party application. So I would have to now go ahead and generate an app password to place here because my little PHP script that I'll be creating is seen as a third-party app or a third-party application, right? So I am going to go to Gmail now and make the necessary adjustments so I can link my Gmail account so I can use the Gmail SMTP server. All right, so I'm just going to go to manage your Google account. Right, so the thing about this is with the app password that I want to use, we must have two-factor or two-step verification enabled. All right. So basically, the app password gives us a 16-digit passcode that allows less secure app or devices to access our Gmail account, right? And as I said, the app password can only be used with accounts that have the two-step verification turned on. So to turn on the two-step verification, if it's not on already, I'll go to security. Mine is on already, so I am good to go. Right? But I'll click on that, confirm my login. If yours is not enabled already, then you'll have to set it up. Now, after scrolling down, I'll see where it says app passwords. This is what I actually want to set up. Right? I have one password set already. So I'll just click on this. Right? And you can delete the password if you want to. So let me go ahead and delete this one. Set up a new one. Now you need to select the app that you'll be using it with. I'll be using it with another app or a custom app. So I'm not using it with mail, calendar, contacts, or YouTube. So I'm just going to click on other. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say PHP email and then generate. So it generates this 16-digit passcode for us. So I'm going to take this now, go back to my send mail configuration file and just paste it here. Right, so instead of using your actual Gmail password, right, we generate this app password and use it. All right, so I'm just going to click on done. Right, so that was set up for me. Right, back. I can pretty much close out of this because I am done with that. Right. Right, so we can go ahead and just save our changes. So I did place the generated app password there. So I'm going to save. All right, and close that. And I'm just going to type a short little PHP script just to test the sending of the email. Right, so enter new file, let's call it email.php. Right. All right. Now, when sending email in PHP, we utilize the mail function. Right. So the mail function, it takes a recipient's address, it takes a subject, and it takes the body of the email. You can also have additional values like from or a CC or a BCC. So those can be added as well. Right. So I'm going to create a variable now, and this variable will be storing the recipient's email. I'm going to call it to, and the recipient that I want to send this email to, let me send it to myself. So I'm going to send it to this email here. Right. Right, so next I'm going to specify a subject. All right, so that's my subject, send email via PHP. Next, I'm going to specify the body of my email. All right, so for the body, it will say, hi, this is a test email sent by PHP script. All right, next I'm going to add a from address. Now the thing about it is with the PHP mail function, these three values are required. All right, there's an additional value that we can add to the parameter of the mail function, and one thing that can be stored in that parameter is the from address. Now, I would have specified a from address already in my PHP configuration file, right? So that would have been done already, but I'm still going to put it here just to show you a little thing between when you have the from in your script and when you have the from in the configuration file. So I'm going to say, all right, so I'm calling the variable headers, and this is the from that I am placing in the script, which is different from the from address that we would have placed in the configuration file. Right. Next, what I want to go ahead and do now is to set up my mail function to actually send the email. So I'm going to put this in a if. So I'm going to say if, I'm going to say mail, all right, and this is the mail function, right? So it is used to send email in PHP. All right, so it requires these three things, and then this fourth value is optional. So it definitely needs the recipient's email address. So we're going to say to, and then we need the subject. All right, you just close this if here. All right, so inside this, I'm just going to echo a message if the email was sent successfully. So I'm just going to echo. All right, so if the email was sent successfully, it will say email successfully sent, and it will state who it was sent to. Right? Let me just put an else here, just in case it was not sent any at all. I'm going to do an echo. Alright, so that's our little PHP script here to test the sending of the email. Alright, so I'm going to run this now just to see if it actually sent the email, and just to verify as well, I'll be sending the email here. Alright, so just to verify that the last thing I received to this email was a security alert because I set up the app password. Alright, so I'm going to try to run my script now and see if the email will be sent here. Alright, so I'm using this plugin to run my PHP script. So I'm going to just click on it just to execute this script. Alright, and it did execute successfully for us. It is saying that email successfully sent, and it told us where it was sent as well. Alright, so I'm going to check my inbox now. Let me just go inbox. Alright, so the email was sent. Alright, so now the from address is this one here. You notice it is different from what we have here. So the point I was making earlier is that the from address that will be used is the one that we can find in the configuration file. Alright, so it's this one that comes up in the configuration file. Alright, so just a quick recap. You'll go into your PHP configuration file, your php.ini file. You will set up your SMTP, set the value to smtp.gmail.com, set the SMTP port as 587. You will set up a from email, and then you'll set the path. Right? Remember to have your quotation marks, those are important. And in the send mail folder, you will look for your send mail configuration file. Right, you'll set your SMTP server as smtp.gmail.com. You set your port as 587, and also ensure to set up your username and password that is being used for the authentication. So right here, so you set your username and your password. This passcode was generated again in Google by stating that we wanted to use a app password. Right, so that is it basically in terms of sending a simple email with PHP using Gmail as our SMTP server and doing it from localhost. Right. I think I might do another example in another video where we send from a contact form, and also, just to show we can send attachments as well. But for now, this is just the basics that I wanted to go over.